So, believe it or not, I actually got invited to a Hyperloop conference, and someone actually went to that conference and has written an article on it called There's No Such Thing as Cold Hard Reality Meets the Hyperloop's Truest Believers. So, this was a conference at the beginning of summer in Colorado, somewhere, I forget where, and they invited me to it about a month beforehand. And I said, well, all right, the proviso that I can actually record the session that I was in or my talk. It wasn't quite clear whether they just wanted me on a panel or to actually give a talk. But I said, I want to be able to record that and put it on the internet or put it on my channel. And for them, that was, oh, I don't know about that. The strange thing there is, they have one of these conferences. Well, I had one last year. No, they have them every year. And I looked at some of those, and they actually put them online. Their last conference, so to speak. The videos are there with like 8 views per video, or something. So quite why, if they're going to put them all up themselves, they would have had a problem with me doing it. I'm not sure, but for them, this was I don't know. We'd have to talk about ownership rights and all that sort of thing. And so I said, all right, just get back to me if it's okay, and they never got back to me. So, I mean, for me, it was not such a big deal in that I would have had to have traveled halfway around the world to get to this, and doing that to speak to, basically to stick some cold, hard reality to these folks. When people are true believers, you're not really doing it to convince true believers. Okay, when I do things like the Why Do People Laugh at Creationists, some of those do actually, I get messages from them saying that, it was your videos that actually finally convinced me this was crap. But, I mean, for the large part, going to talk to Hyperloop's truest believers is an act of futility. Anyway, it turns out that it's probably a good thing that I didn't bother going, because if the attendance of the conference was any indication, not many people are on board with the whole Hyperloop thing, at least not yet. According to the list shared with all participants after the conference, about half of the conference, 60 or so attendees, were either speakers or panelists. Right? So basically, it wasn't so much a conference, but a bunch of Hyperloop enthusiasts getting together. And this is what they call themselves, HARP. I forget what it stands for. It's an acronym of some sort. Hyperloop. I know, actualization. Let's see if we can find that. HARP. There we go. Hyperloop Advanced Research Partnership. And it is tiny. But they did have... They seem to hint that they wanted me on a panel with the Virgin Hyperloop, whatever, the guy doing the Virgin Hyperloop, which is now into fractions of $billions of funding, and they're talking about building something in India. I'll do a video about that sometime as well. Yeah, none of which will go anywhere. I mean, you just look at the outline of the system they're proposing, and it's almost farcical to build it. It's like Elon Musk and his loop in Vegas, where the whole system that he's digging is, a kilometer long, a couple of kilometers long or something. None of the benefits that Hyperloop promised could be delivered on such a small, or Loop promised could be delivered on such a small system. And it's the same with the Indian version. In that all you're really doing with the Hyperloop is getting a maglev train and putting it in a vacuum tube for twice the speed. And given that maglev is marginal technology and no one's got an idea of how to build the vacuum tubes, plus now the trains have to be airtight spaceships, essentially, there are just so many problems with this. But, yeah, they're just convinced, now this is the Kitty Hawk moment that, within 50 years we'll go from a crappy little plane, which is, they claim they had their Virgin Hyperloop, claimed it had its Kitty Hawk moment 3 years ago. and it got to 70 miles per hour. It's like, no. I remember that one. All they did was they had a little maglev train. And, well, there were maglev trains that go sort of 3 times this fast. Why was that their Kitty Hawk moment? Anyway, so let's take a look at what kind of went on at this Hyperloop conference that I missed. Yeah, they want faster than jets. The word didn't exist in 2003. So this is one of their Schwarzwälder. Didn't give up until Elon Musk gave it a name. The now legendary white paper, which they call, the Hyperloop community call the Alpha paper. And this is what gets me. Is nothing in that white paper has come remotely to fruition. Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk just had this little schematic about the train. We have a picture of the train. There we go. Yeah, it was going to have a little turbine on the front, which was going to take all the air compressed by the fast-moving train, and it was going to compress it a bit more and use it to run air skis. And yeah, so no one's built anything that goes fast enough that it even has to remotely worry about the crash hour limit or something. Yeah, it's basically, if you're going through a tube, you compress the air in front of you. And eventually the weight of the air compressed in front of you, just means it takes too much energy to go through the tube. Not obviously a problem if you're in an airplane or something, because the air just moves to the side. But it is if you're in a tube. Sorry, I got a bit of cold at the moment. Yes, they're brilliant. So the full-scale Hyperloop track is only about 10 of these tubes stuck together. That's it. That's the whole thing. And they've not done anything really to improve it since. Oh no, not true. They put an airlock on one end. But all it can do is go back and forth up a kilometre-long track. Yeah, they've got... And it's just a maglev. None of this Elon Musk white paper stuff. Yeah. With more than a hint of ideological reverence. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. All these people later on in this article, they're going to go on and on about how Hyperloop will completely change America in a very short period of time. And it's like, America can't even build rail infrastructure. And Hyperloop is going to be a damn sight more expensive than rail infrastructure. Usual move. Yeah. So, Musk has had, oh god, how many years of competition for the Hyperloop? And actually, I'll bring this one up, right? So this is the latest winner or something of the third Hyperloop contest. Nothing that goes into the Hyperloop has resembled anything in the white paper. Well, in that there have been no real air skis. They've just been basically variants on a remote-controlled car, a very overpowered remote-controlled car. So it weighs 60 kilos, about the weight of a person. It's about the length of a person, and it's absolutely tiny, 50 centimeters wide. And for something like this, the air resistance, the crest hour limit's not even remotely an issue, because this thing is tiny in a giant tube. So, yeah. Right, you get an idea for... let me sort that out. So you get an idea that pushing the air out of the way when that's your Hyperloop entry, that's actually the sort of winning Hyperloop entry. That's it. It's a little remote-controlled car. Runs on wheels, if I remember rightly. So, yeah. I mean, it's basically a really, really overpowered remote-controlled car. I think... Come on. Yeah, where's the passengers go again? So it's huge battery packs. I'm pretty certain that this thing just runs on wheels. It's literally just well, not a remote controlled car. It's just a really small electric car, um, which is crazy. I don't think that they've actually managed to get this thing to go fast as a passenger high speed electric car. In fact, no, I think that's right. There's recently released was the a car that can go 300 miles per hour, which is very similar to this. Now, of course, the reason you can't do that on the roads is because it wouldn't be particularly safe. And yeah, I remain to be convinced that doing this in the Hyperloop will be safe either. You know, I mean, you could just equally argue that, well, all we need is the right smart drive technology on our cars, and you'll just be able to get in your car and go 300 miles per hour, you know, because the car can do it. Not so much. Anyway, yeah, so that's basically all they're doing is they're planes at 30,000 feet have low air pressure. This is the reason why planes fly up so high, is because there is less air resistance. You're down to and about a sixth of an atmosphere by the time you get up to this, which means more or less one sixth of the drag. You can't go much higher because you need oxygen to burn in your engines, and there's only one sixth of the oxygen to burn up there. So that's basically why airplanes, even on the sort of short haul flights, will actually sort of climb up really high, because you basically don't get as much drag up there. Yeah, I mean, this is another thing that Alpha Paper predicts more than 700 miles per hour. Virgin Hyperloop loses 600, others 670. It's all just, you know, they're so far away from actually being able to sensibly predict a number that these are all kind of useless. It always makes me laugh, actually, you know, when what was it? Elon Musk's loop says it'll be 156 miles per hour or something like that. Like they can predict to the nearest mile per hour how fast this thing's going to go. Current record speed is 288 miles per hour. So that's slower than a commercially available car, slower than existing, and might even be slower than high-speed rail, and it's certainly slower than maglev at the moment. And like I said, yeah, this is not what you would describe as a mode of transport in any significant way. In fact, it always amazes me. I mean, they're obviously just built by engineering schools as projects, but, you know, if I was Airbus, I would be kind of ashamed to. I mean, it's all right. You learn quite a lot by building something like this, but, I mean, nonetheless, it's not quite pointless busy work, but, yeah, it's like trying to build personal jetpacks or something. You know that the ultimate goal is beyond what you can do, but you learn a lot by trying to do it, even if you know it's impossible. No, whatever. And that's the entire of Hyperloop 1's track. Doesn't look quite so impressive from here. Doesn't look quite straight either. I'm sure it is. But the other thing you'll notice, actually hidden, right, you see all these electrical boxes here. I'm pretty sure that looks like a bloody diffusion pump. Holy crap! But yeah, if you take a look at other angles, you'll see that there's huge, big-ass pumps like all the way down here. Because otherwise, pumping out something this size just takes forever and a huge amount of energy. But I'm sure that's just a giant diffusion pump. Yeah, I mean, so this is the analogy they always come up with. Yeah, it took us 50 years to go from rickety World War I era biplanes to supersonic jets and landing on the moon. Yes, this is also true. And the Hyperloop was proposed about 50 years ago, and it's not moved anywhere since. You know, just like personal jetpacks were proposed at about the same time and haven't gone anywhere since because it's. Yeah, and this is the other bizarre thing. The technology that you need to do this is not sort of modern, sophisticated technology. What you're looking at here is a metal tube. This is Victorian era technology. That's kind of interesting. They just welded the other end shut. There's only one. It's the only mode of transport that can take you from where you get into it to where you get out of it. It's the only mode of transport that doesn't move you anywhere. Nice one, Virgin. Yeah. So this is what they're always promising. Uh, yeah, this is another one. They've got another Hyperloop Transport Technologies. That's theoretical. 760 miles per hour with 16,000 passengers per day based on a 40-second headway. Yeah, I mean, they're just nowhere near to this. Just pumping down the airlocks will take you longer than that. And maintaining a vacuum chamber is tough. You know, I do that all the time. Even small scale vacuum chambers are tough. Tracing down a leak on something this size is almost impossible. Plus, even it's never going to be completely leak proof. There's always going to be some minor leak that you just never find, which basically means you're going to be pumping on it all the time, which takes lots of energy. Yeah, so if you ignore all the technical problems, we'll all be traveling by jetpack in the 1980s. Another presentation, Hypernet Holding. I've not even heard of this one. Hypernet Holding Corporation, which, as far as I can tell, only exists on paper. Posted a bullet point slide saying that Hyperloop could serve a 760 billion per year market. Yeah, which he describes as reasonable but probably not accurate. I mean, it's like just saying that imagine that a system that would take the world 50 years to make and all of its GDP for that, then in that case, where it's all working perfectly and there's no maintenance costs or anything, then yeah, it could have a huge market. Problem is, it costs too much to build. It costs too much to maintain. No one knows how to do it, and you're making predictions of how much it's going to make per year. Green-coloured glass. Oh, they're going to worry about. So this is one of the reasons why I wasn't keen to do it. Right, person per year produces about, just by breathing in and out, you produce about 300 kilos, third of a ton of carbon dioxide per year. A single transatlantic flight will put out about 1 ton of CO2 per year. Which is, I mean, obviously, if you're just living, it's 3 times your carbon footprint per year. However, if you compare the carbon footprint of a first world lifestyle, that's about 10 tons per year. So just one transatlantic flight, I forget whether it's there and back, it might be there and back, is about 10% of a first world carbon footprint. And they're going to say that One passenger share can account for as much. Okay. Yeah. So they don't actually know the numbers, right? What they don't say is, yeah, that's true if you're just breathing in and out or living a third world lifestyle. If you're living a first world lifestyle, a single passenger flight is about 1/10 of your carbon dioxide footprint per year. Um, yeah, not everyone flies, which is why it's only 1% of the emissions for the US. Could grow to 4%. And now they're going to, oh, all emissions. Yeah. I mean, that basically, uh, your planes will always require, um, especially the long haul. There's no other fuel that has the energy density of gasoline. It's basically there's no other real sensible way to do it if you're limited by modern chemistry. Yeah, battery technologies, they're just way too much. Um, Enter the Hyperloop, the cornerstone, and they're going to say, yeah, we're all going to do it for using back of the envelope calculations, estimates that could reduce the emissions by transport sector by 28%. Is that to 28% or by 28% is almost nothing. And that's ignoring the overhead costs of actually building this thing in terms of the carbon dioxide. For the this is what I was saying. Just look at all the electrics. These are all pumps, right? This is the electric supply for some tiny section of Hyperloop. Yeah, and like the picture's always taken. It ends there. It's actually quite comical when you go to this thing, and it's this tiny. It's just completely dwarfed by the landscape around it. So yeah, you make all the predictions you want about how energy efficient it's going to be on the basis that, oh man, there's the airlock. Didn't see that before. So what you'll have here is a big sheet of metal that basically slides in and allows you to pump this down. But even pumping something this big down will take a long time. I would guess 20 minutes to get it down to a millibar or something. And they don't seem that. That's weird. Where are all the pumps for this bit? Oh, they must be in this thing. Anyway. So yeah, I would love to know what their turnaround is just for getting something in and out of an airlock this size. I'm going to guess they put extra ports on here, so just in case they need extra pumps at some point. But more pumping, more power consumed. Yeah, claims about how it's going to save us by reducing our carbon footprint. I'm not seeing it yet. Yeah, because that's basically all it is. Maglev in a extremely difficult, extremely energy intensive vacuum. I mean, just look at the bloody power consumption. Space is easy, Earth is hard. Yeah. Now, if you say this to anyone who actually deals with space travel, they will just laugh in your face. Space is exceptionally difficult. The speeds that you're typically looking at in space are kilometers per second. So I forget what low Earth orbital velocity is. It's like 8 kilometers per second or something, which is speed of sound's about a third of a kilometer per second. So it's 20 times the speed of sound. That sort of thing is what you're dealing with in space. And just accelerating something up to 20 times the speed of sound, the only thing that we've got that'll do it, well, sensibly do it, is rockets. Earth is hard. Well, actually, you're bringing all the problems of space travel, like putting your train into a vacuum tube to Earth. Earth is easy. Now let's make it hard by bringing the vacuum of space down to the Earth's surface. Uh, yeah. Oh yeah, now they're going. Now they're working out the turning curves at the speed of sound, right? Because with planes, they have fairly gentle turning curves. They're called zero G turns. That's basically when the plane banks, but you feel like regular gravity in your seat. Something weird's going on because the shadows are all moving around. But even if you close your eyes, the little gyroscopes in your ears tell you that you're rotating. Um, so that's what they have in planes. Now, if you want to get something similar in a Hyperloop, now of course you got to build that curve on the ground. Which, if there's infrastructure on the ground, you've either got to demolish or dig tunnels or something like that. So basically, the Hyperloop has to be dead level for the whole journey. Any slight bumps and wiggles give you extreme G-forces that will not be tolerable by the passengers inside. Hyperloop would need approximately 6 miles to execute a 90-degree turn at 600 miles per hour. And that's what Hyperloop 1 says. And at that point, first of all, just getting the land rights to something like that are an absolute nightmare. And this is one of the things that slows down rail. Building rail systems, just getting the land rights is a pain in the arse and very expensive. And then, of course, you've got exposure to the weather and the elements. Simple problems are you get sunlight on your tube, it gets hot on the top, it's not hot on the bottom. The top wants to be longer than the bottom, so the tube's going to buckle, basically. That's problem one. Even if you get some sort of expansion gaps in there, which then have to be vacuum tight, of course. Problem number two is, let's just say a rain squall comes through. And again, it's going to dump lots of cold water on the top and not on the bottom. These are transitions that can happen very rapidly. Wind shear. You get a gust of wind on this. All these things are fairly difficult to do when you've got something travelling at about the speed of a bullet through with really quite small tolerances in that, anything goes slightly wrong. This travelling, you've seen a gun, right? You've seen how thick the gun barrel is. You've seen how big the bullet is. All right, they have to take a degree more stronger forces. But even at that, you can sort of actually, this is not such a good analogy, but something traveling at the speed of sound weighing 30 tons will go through a tiny thin vacuum wall like a knife, like a 1,000-degree knife through warm butter. This has to be absolutely perfect. With a plane, it wiggles a bit to the left or the right. No one cares, right? Because there's lots of air for it to go into. And almost the comical thing, it's a new mode of transport, my arse. It's a bus in fact, this guy's not even Mac. Well, whatever, I mean. They're all just bloody pictures, right? For me, this is almost the definitive hallmark that you're dealing with pseudoscience bullshit, is its computer-generated graphics. The only time I've ever seen something like this where it wasn't complete bullshit was some of the Mars lander sequences, which, NASA managed to pull off for $1 billion per shot, or similar. Michael Mooney, he might be the guy who invited me, actually. So the guy inviting me was Colorado School of Mines. Right, so now this is sort of reasonable. There's a rule of thumb that planners use. It's 1 times 3 times 10 times, meaning elevated projects like that cost 10 times more. Cost 3 times more than basically on the level ones, and underground tunnels cost 10 times more. And then he's going to go and tell us, that the other problem with tunnels is they take forever to dig. So, even the fastest ones are going to take you 30 years to get from Washington to New York, which is not a long tunnel. When you consider what they're proposing for Hyperloop. And, okay, you can make it faster by getting multiple boring machines and all that sort of thing, but, it's not going to happen. I mean, almost always with large infrastructure projects like building railways, it's almost impossible for a commercial company to do it because the infrastructure investments are just obscene, right? So almost always they have to be built basically with public money. And the amount of public money you would need to build this white elephant are just completely obscene. I mean, like I was saying, they've got about $1 billion in, or a significant fraction of $1 billion for Hyperloop 1 at the moment, for this India thing. And I'm one of these days I'm going to do the calculations for if I were to get $1 billion in dollar bills and just burn it in a power station, I would actually get some return on my investment. That's going to be more than they're going to get for the $1 billion that they put into the Indian Hyperloop. They're just going to hit reality at some point. This is before you get onto the human element. Like, how do you stop people losing their minds when you're sat in a tube at the speed of a bullet? And so this is another thing. Hyperloop's come up with all these graphics about how they can have virtual windows that will move around as you move your head, and it's like, that's just so dumb in that it only works. The illusion only works for one person. Everyone else in the tube, the windows will just look weird. About midway through the second day, I realized this was not so much a conference about Hyperloop, but in people's underlying faith in technology innovations to fix the world's problems. Yeah, it's techno-magic. You just got to believe in the techno-magic and it'll all come together. We're at a stage of trying to understand what's important to understand, which basically means, one panelist says, could be rephrased as, we don't understand very much about Hyperloop at all. Right, so basically I've just outlined the reasons why, in this video so far, I've outlined a gazillion reasons why we don't have Hyperloop when it was proposed, getting on, the best part of 100 years ago. After I express yet another of my seeming never-ending concerns about the viability of Hyperloop, Schwarzwalter arched his eyebrows again and replied, I'm an optimist. I believe we will find answers to these questions. Yeah. So, speaking as someone who has had extensive experience, I mean, just dealing with small vacuum systems, I'm an optimist as well, and I don't think you've got anywhere near, I don't think you'll ever solve these problems. Okay, you can solve them, it's just, it will be 100 times more expensive to get to that solution than, say, for instance, high-speed rail. And at the end of the day, why do we actually need this? I mean, I think at some point here he's going to start going on about how this is going to revolutionize, they start talking about how, oh God, we can learn from the mistakes of other modes of transport. That this will completely revolutionize the world. And, well, I've lost my train of thought there. Um, not so sure. Yeah, felt very alone in his doubts. Okay, I've just completely lost my train of thought there. Sorry. Uh, but yeah. Oh, and this is another thing that they like is we already have a fifth mode of transport. Waller opines during his talk. It's pipelines. We just haven't extended it to people. Yeah. This is the thing about and their modes of transport. You know, is electric scooter a mode of transport? Is hopping a mode of there's but I remember now. I remember now. Yeah, they're talking about how this will completely revolutionize the world, and that's fantastic. Um, I've forgotten again. Fuck. God. So I mean, there's this mindless optimism that they're going to solve all of the problems, and it's going to become a world transport system um, that will solve all of the problems of transport. Uh, so this is another thing, right? They go on at some length about how they think this is going to solve all of the world's transport problems, and it will completely change everything. To which the answer is, why do we actually need to move around at all? I mean, to go on vacation, maybe, but honestly, a lot of the uh, travel that people do is for meetings and the such like, and you can kind of do that with video conferencing with zero of the carbon footprint. In fact, that was one of my thoughts that if I couldn't actually go to the conference, I would do it by Skype. But seeing as they never actually got back to me about whether they would let me put it on YouTube at all, that just kind of fell by the by. But you sort of come down and they say, they're going to learn off other modes of transport, and we already have a fifth mode of transport. Waller opined during his talk. It's called pipelines. We just haven't extended it to people. Well, not if you don't include undergrounds and metros and the such like. What he means is putting vacuum in pipes and sending things around in them at the speed of sound is just obscenely technically challenging. And also, what the hell do you call a mode of transport? I mean, okay, it's a metro, but all you've done is you've taken the air out of it. Is that a new mode of transport? That's like saying that a scooter is a new mode of transport, and then electrifying it's still yet another mode of transport. Anyway, so that was this conference that I was actually invited to, but they just never got back to me. And yeah, so some quite funny comments on this article. You might want to take a look at it. Okay, so if you enjoyed that, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want more like this. And I'll see you next time.